Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight with Black Lives Matters Louisville and our healing team. We are a group of individuals who believe that Black Lives Matters, particularly here in Louisville, everywhere, but in Louisville, Black lives do matter. And so we want to, again, bring to you a healing hour, things that kind of help you move through life space. And make sure that we are taking care of our minds and our bodies. So tonight, we are really, really lucky to be joined by Dr. Renee Sartin from Campbellsville University and NASW, Kentucky. Dr. Sartin has a great reputation as a social worker here in Kentucky and an advocate, particularly for families that are experiencing grief. And tonight, we are going to have Dr. Sartin to join us and tell us the story of how she's traversed through some of these experiences and to share with us how we may also manage grief in our spaces in a healthy way that allows us to not forget, to still remember our loved ones and honor their legacies while maintaining our own health and doing what our loved ones would want us to do as we continue to move through life space. So we are going to be talking with Dr. Sartin, and I'm so appreciative, Dr. Sartin, for you joining us tonight. I appreciate you as a seasoned elder in the game to kind of impart your wisdom with us. So over the next hour, we are going to listen to Dr. Sartin's story. And if anyone has any questions along the way, feel free to check in with us. If you are joining us via Facebook, you can ask us questions there, and we'll be sure to try to get those to Dr. Sartin as we move along through the healing hour stream tonight. So if you have any thoughts, comment and ask those questions below in the chat, and we will make sure that we try to get to that. So without further ado, I don't want to take up too much time. I would love to introduce you again to Dr. Renee Sartin. Welcome, 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 welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Shantae. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity, this voice to share with individuals in the community about healing and what it's about and the pain and that so many of us are going through. So I really do appreciate this platform. Thank you so much.
Dr. Sartin, I know that you have a couple of things you're going to take us over in regards to your own personal story. I think that it was really important for us to hold this space tonight. Louisville has experienced a lot of gun violence over the last few years, and that's always been more of an experience that we would care to have in the Black community. Mm-hmm. And so I think that a lot of our grief, one, is systematic. Unfortunately, Black people sometimes have to deal with our grief in ways that are not healing or helpful to us. And so it's really important, you know, as we ground ourselves and move forward, to hear stories of people who are processing that grief in an appropriate way. And that hopefully we can discuss with you tonight, Dr. Sartin, resources and things that people can do. Mothers who have lost children, siblings, you know, who have lost siblings, children who have lost parents. How can they move forward and process through this cycle of grief to their own well-being? So I'd like to ask if it's okay with you if we start and kind of pull up some graphics.
Yes, ma'am.
your story a little bit. So
Yeah, we can go ahead and get started.
okay, so we are going to go ahead and pull those pictures up to be able to share that. And to the people that are joining us now, if you would grant us just a little patience as we move through getting our PowerPoint pulled up.
You know, as Shantae is getting this together, just want you all to know that, you know, what I'm getting ready to talk to you about tonight is, you know, you've probably heard my story. Thank you very much, Shantae. You've heard my story. Most of you have something similar to it. And you've probably realized that it might sound something like something that happened to someone that you know. And you'll find out later on tonight in my presentation that there's really not much difference except how the family handles it and how the family deals with it and how the family heals with it. It is a story that is so sad and so horrifying that you just cannot believe this is what is happening to our beautiful Black families here in the city of Louisville each and every day. And while we all mourn our own personal losses, we must at the same time try to protect our loved ones who are still on this earth today from the disease that runs through the city of Louisville. The disease is called gun violence. Let me introduce you to my family. Slide. Now, this is me and my husband. We live a normal life. I'd like to think that we do. Hardworking couple, married 38 years. Slide. From our marriage, we had 2 children. You see my husband on the side with my daughter, and I'm on the other side with my son. Slide. We have a daughter and a son. Slide. And now we have our beautiful 8-year-old granddaughter. Slide. And this is our granddaughter with her father, our son. I'm here today as a social work educator to share my family's experience with you, the homicide, the aftermath, and what's to come of my son's death. I am here to share my experiences with you as me and my family continues to heal from our loss. The number one stress that a person can experience is the death of your spouse and also the death of your child. My family is like hundreds of other Black American families in the city of Louisville. My family is among those who have lost family members to gun violence and who have had family fatally wounded by gun violence. Slide. I will begin my story with my nephew. In 2018, my nephew was shot 6 times and left for dead in a nightclub in the West End of Louisville. He was shot 2 times in each leg, once in his chest and once in his head. When the police arrived, they found several lifeless bodies laying around throughout the club. Several individuals have been shot at that club that night, and my nephew was taken to the University Hospital where multiple leg surgeries were performed that night. It was here where he began his lifelong fight to walk and to regain his strength again, or as much as he possibly could, and most importantly, to try and bounce back from the trauma that he had been through and continues to go through. He spent weeks in the hospital and even longer in rehab. When he was released from rehab, he began to train and build his body back. And then he began to teach others how to do the same. This is his ministry. Slide. He rode his bike 16 miles a day throughout the city, early in the mornings, and he rallied others to ride with him. Eventually, he became a personal trainer and an avid golfer. He's helping others to deal with gun violence while training their bodies and minds at the same time. Slide. Fast forward to Derby Eve last year. My nephew's sister was shot in a nightclub in the city of Louisville. Slide. She was 37 years old, and she left behind 2 children. Slide. Now let's go further back to 2020, the year of 173 fatal homicides in the city of Louisville. And yes, our son was the 114th homicide in Louisville, Kentucky. On September 15th, 2020, our son was murdered right around the corner from our home. Earlier that morning, our son went out to look for a truck to purchase. He had wrecked his car in the prior months, and he had finally gotten that settlement truck check. So he was ready to go out and look for a new purchase. Slide. So he came to the house that morning to show me what he was test driving, and that was the gray Dodge Ram that you see in the picture. I took that picture of him in the truck, and then after he pulled out of the driveway, he left in that gray Dodge Ram. If I had known it was going to be the very last time that I was ever going to see my son, I would have hugged him a little longer that day. And I think I would have run to the end of the driveway to look down the street while he drove out of sight. My son went out that night with a young lady. And rumor has it is they went to the waterfront. Then they went to get something to eat. And then he took her home. And when my son left the apartment complex of taking her home, I am told bullets were riddled into his car. We were also told that he died instantly. The next morning, we heard a loud knock at our front door. It was the coroner. And she knocked on our door that following morning to tell us that our son was dead. We asked, "How do you know?" And she responded that she viewed his body in the morgue. I immediately told her that she did not know who my son was and that she was wrong. I called to my husband to come downstairs, and she again told us both that our son was dead. I asked, "How do you know it was him?" She said, "Ma'am, it was him." She then gave me a plastic bag with my son's personal items in it. It was at that moment we realized that our son was taken from us in the night and we would never, ever get him back. Our 29-year-old son, who loved his daughter with all of his heart, was murdered by multiple gunshots in his car, September 15th, 2020 at 1:15 in the morning. My son's investigation remains open. It has not been touched in over a year. There are no suspects. My son's name was and still is Michael Allen Glenn Sartin. My granddaughter lost her father that night. My daughter lost her brother that night. And my husband and I, we lost our son that night. But now we have the strength, and we have always had the desire to talk to others like ourselves and share our story of how we have moved forward with all of the grief that we have. It is sessions like these that people like me can share our story with people like you. Each time that I am asked to tell my son's story, it becomes another true blessing and another opportunity to honor our son and talk with you, not only about our personal story, but to share with you the need to bring our Black families back together again in our communities and in the city of Louisville, to show one another the ways to manage the pain that we have all endured and grow our Black communities the way we all deserve to thrive and grow and enjoy life. They told us our son had a quick death and he did not feel any pain. I believe my son suffered. I believe he fought for his life as he struggled to take his last breath. And as time passes by, the pain we feel still remains, but we find ways to manage our day-to-day activities. We shift our pain to the background of our lives. Yes, it's still there, but we don't cry every day anymore. But our hearts are still very heavy, but it's not as heavy. We're able to move about and function. And when the moment arises, we pause and we take that time and we go through it. And then we get up and we continue to move on. This is how my family lives today. In all of this, I would be a little remiss if I did not tell you that my husband was diagnosed with cancer the month before our son was killed. Slide. Slide. He was well into the rounds of chemotherapy. The following month, which lasted through December of 2020, a time that was supposed to be a celebration, it had been put on the back burner. We thought as soon as we would get through the chemo, we would celebrate my husband's retirement. The rounds of chemo were hard on him, and there were times when the chemo took him down and took all of his strength away. Slide. And then our son was murdered. And that felt like a concrete block sitting on my head and my chest. My stomach was in knots. Here I was, a full-time caretaker for my husband, as I continued to work a full-time job, as he continued to battle cancer. And now this, are you kidding me? These were the times where I could not breathe, and other times where I struggled to catch my breath. In addition, my husband, my daughter, and we had to carry on and plan Mike's funeral. It did not take place until a week later because a full autopsy was ordered. And that's because it's proper protocol to take a week to do an autopsy when there's a homicide. It was important for us, though, to have everything just right for my son's funeral. Slide. Pallbearers in black suits, U of L and U of K face masks, red roses and corsages and boutonnieres. Slide. Red was my son's favorite color, and you knew it at his funeral. Slide. We put him in a black suit with a red tie, red boutonniere, and yes, he had on red Jordan tennis shoes as he laid in his black casket. Slide. My son is buried in Calvary Cemetery, our Catholic family cemetery. And you will see in the picture, my nephew, who was shot several times back, is right up front, carrying his cousin at the front of the casket to get him to his resting place safely. Slide. This is Mike. Slide. This is Mike. Slide. And this is my son. In PowerPoint. There are too many Black mothers and Black fathers who are losing their children in the city of Louisville each day. and each night. When will it all stop? How many of our children have to die before we realize we need to help one another through all of this? The pain we feel is real, and the trauma we are experiencing is real. The hurt is outrageously real. The loss is gut-wrenching. Never in your wildest dreams could you ever imagine your child dying because your child is supposed to bury you, but we buried our child. I always knew that there was something worthy that I was supposed to do when my son was killed, but I didn't know what it was initially or what magnitude it would be at that time. And if I'm honest with myself, I admit that I wasn't ready at the very beginning to do anything at all. I was just numb. I was still deeply grieving my son's death, along with my husband and daughter. But I was moving around about in the world and I was working. I filled my time with day-to-day activities, but there was something I felt I was supposed to be doing. But I could not put my finger on it. Meanwhile, I have to share that there was always a time during each of my days for a year where I had a moment alone to cry my eyes out. And when I was done, I felt refreshed and I was able to move forward and start or finish my day, depending on the time my moment occurred. So after one of these moments, I had a light bulb that went off in my head. And that is how my calling, my ministry began. And it was a call to action, grief to growth. We speak on numerous occasions, and not only about gun violence in the city, but also about the unfair and unjust incarceration time that our Black and brown sons and daughters experience in their lives. It's about the policies that are still in place in our communities, our cities, our states, and our nation that keep Black families from being equal with our white friends. We all know change is necessary to provide equity for everyone. So that is where we are. We're looking for justice. We're looking for answers. We're looking for safer places for all of our Black families to live without fear, without violence. Looking for peace. Looking for togetherness. Looking for that village to raise a child. We are all just ordinary people. We have all tried to make a difference in our own ways. And now we are faced with what I call mass grieving. We try and deal with all of this while we continue to grow in our relationships, we grow in our families, and as we grow in our lives. But gun violence and incarceration of our young Black men and women, this is an issue that our youth are very interested in changing. And as it becomes worse and worse as the day goes by, it's imperative that we do something about it. We have to help them. On the average, statistics say persons averaging 24 years old and younger are the ones who are disproportionately affected by gun violence in the United States. In 2018, Black Americans represented 34% of the sentenced prison population, nearly triple our 12% share in the United States adult population. However, whites accounted for 30% of prisoners, about half their 63% share of the adult population. Black Americans in Kentucky are 3.2 times more likely to be in prison than whites. This is a sad but true statement for our city of Louisville as well. Now, firearm homicide is the second leading cause of injury and death among our youth. And even though firearm homicide rates are higher in our cities than they are in the suburban and rural areas of Kentucky, our young people of color living in all areas of the United States, they have to cope with the fact that the firearm homicide rate for the 15 to 24-year-old child is 49 times higher in the United States than in any other high-income country. Let me break it down to you a little bit more. Did you know that in 2021, last year, the country of Japan had 1 homicide death by gun? 1 for the whole year, compared to the United States, 45,000 plus homicide rates, okay? Which is probably really even more, okay? So those of us who have experienced gun violence in our families may have received the news by text messages or found it on social media that a friend of yours was shot and killed in the night. Or you may have gotten a phone call from a friend telling you about a loved one. Or even worse, you may have been notified the way we were, having a coroner knock on your door and tell you that your child is dead. Louisville's Black residents were hit hard in 2020, accounting for 71% of the identified victims killed. Last year, 2021, 181 homicides were reported, and 169 of those were by guns. And the persons who were killed with those guns were ranging from the ages of 0 to older than 65. But the majority being in the age range of 25 to 34. And 137 of those people, 137 of those 169 that were killed were Black. Fast forward to 2022. Currently, Louisville is 17 in the top 20 cities in the United States with the highest murder rate. We're right under Indianapolis and we're right above Oakland, California. Sitting in there is number 17. Guys, these are our families that are suffering. These are our families on the news each night that's being shot up and killed and left to die. These are our babies. To the mamas out there and your sons. But these are our heartbeats that we're losing each and every day. Grief is the process that many Black Americans are going through right now due to experiencing a major, significant loss in our lives, not to mention the violent way in which we lost them. And those of us who fall in that category or have close loved ones who fall into that category experience the grief for a long period of time that is filled with sadness and other emotions as we yearn for that which we have unnecessarily lost. And as we cope with this grief, we need to understand that we will experience many emotions. There are stages in grief, things such as denial you will go through, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. These are normal emotions that you feel when someone very close to you has died. Sometimes you get stuck in some of those stages, and sometimes you can move through it smoothly. But don't be alarmed when these things are happening to you, because you need to process these stages as you experience it. And it's very important that you recognize those stages. They are real and they do exist. You also need to know that grief can develop into something much more serious, like complicated grief, which is acute grief that can come with many symptoms of depression. Now, let's add trauma to that grief. You know, someone dying is one piece, but when it's a traumatic death, that adds a whole nother level onto that. And then when you add race-based trauma onto that death, see how it compiles up when you're looking at the policies and the way that some of the Blacks are killed and some of the situations that we go through. The trauma falls into that picture, and the race-based trauma goes into that picture of that complicated grief, and it just becomes more and more complex. First, we have the traumatizing loss of our loved ones' lives, which we may or may not have ever really processed. You know, the process of grief, it has to be completed. It has to be completed in order for you to move on, please complete that process. And without fully expressing or embracing the emotions of the grief that we feel, the loss remains alive and real. If you don't process it, and it will be constantly happening over and over in your mind. Traumatic loss, it lives in your mind, it lives in your body, and it lives in your soul as shock and denial, contributing to many hypervigilant symptoms of trauma. Some people try to avoid grief because grief eventually leads to acceptance and having to face the fact that a loss has really taken place. And if a life has been lost, or if there was a significant traumatizing loss in somebody's life, they may be able to come to terms with that opportunity if they are able to experience some type of trauma recovery with a professional. I was fortunate enough to be going through therapy when my son was murdered. And I believe those sessions helped me in many ways that I can never describe. Mourning the experience of trauma and the innocence lost due to trauma can inspire someone in trauma recovery to work through the stages of grief if you're having difficulty. Trauma profoundly changes the way we see ourselves in the world we live in and who we are in that world. Many of us that have seen trauma and have gone through trauma, we have a trauma timeline. And it looks like this. We see things of life before the trauma, life during the trauma, and what life is like after the trauma. We separate it into 3 compartments. The change trauma creates in our lives, it's saddening and it's depressing. But because a true loss of life perspective has taken place and trauma has taken place, and now recovery can begin taking place. But know that grief has to be a part of the process, and it will ultimately lead to growth where we have freedom from that trauma. And that's where we want to be, those of us who have faced trauma. Now, my family is looking for closure. And these talks and these events, such as tonight, this helps. But I really do not know what closure looks like for us. I think it looks like finding my son's murderer, so my son can finally rest, I think. Or does the future look like it does today? No suspect, no charges. At least my nephew's attempted murderer was found and charged. And at least my nephew's sister's murderer was found. I just want justice for our son. I'd like to see justice for all of our sons and daughters who have been murdered, who have been killed, who have been unnecessarily taken off of this earth. I just want justice, and I will not rest until that happens. But I must admit, I don't know how I will handle it if and when they find his murderer. How will I handle the whole court scene? Will I make a statement? Will I tell the murderer who took my son from me that I hope he burns in hell? Probably not. Do I really want to hear all those ugly details of what transpired up to my son's death? Not really. But I will be there if that day ever comes. My family, my whole family will be there. And until then, I will continue to strategically tuck all of those horrifying memories away in place where they are not in sight, only to be reborn on that day in court, which may or may not ever come. That is my story. Thank you.
Wow. That was really powerful, Dr. Sartin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you, Mitzi. That's what I want to do. It's like, like I was telling you the other day, nobody really gets to hear stories like this. You hear of your child being killed and you see it on the news and you see the family crying, and that's the end of it. But what is the family going through on a day-to-day basis? And that's kind of why we put this presentation together. We want you to see that we feel the pain, and we know the pain that you're going through. It's horrible. And too many of us are experiencing this every day. We've got to find a way to help ourselves come together. I believe that in the city of Louisville, there are so many wonderful projects that are going on. There are a lot of Black families and Black leaders who are helping pave the way to make it a much better, lucrative life for us as gun violence continues in the city of Louisville and throughout the nation. But it seems like everybody's trying to do their part. And this is my part. I think that when somebody comes and shares with you the rawness of how you really felt, how it went down once they died, how did you find out? What was it like going through the funeral, and seeing those pictures? I mean, it's not easy for me to do it all the time, but it's something that I believe people need to see. They need to know that you're not by yourself. We've been through this. We're still going through this. And those of you whose children's murders have been solved, I'm so happy for you. I'm very happy for you. It doesn't bring your child back, but at least you know the whole story. We don't know the whole story. And that's what, kind of puts another extra dagger in it. But that's
Dr. Sartin,
Mhm.
if I could just ask you a couple of questions, because a lot of the criticism that I see sometimes, Black Lives Matters, we are looking to prevent violence in our community, whether it's intra community or without. And so we hear a lot of conversation about people who don't see the grassroots side of the work that's being done to prevent gun violence. And so you always hear a lot of the conversation when we talk about defunding the police and maybe moving some of that funding into preventative programs that prevent violence in our communities, that we don't talk about how to solve gun violence in our community. And I appreciate you coming out, because a lot of what you're doing is what people say that they don't see. So I appreciate and honor your story and let you know that we see you and we see the work that you're doing in the community. And so we hope that we can lend some strength to the work that you're doing and to encourage you to continue on with this, because this is what we need in the Black community, to be able to share our stories and to connect with each other, to build up this fortress that we can love on one another. So what are some ways that you think the community itself can help to heal this tragedy of gun violence that we're seeing on our streets?
Well, first of all, I think we need to look within our own families. We need to talk to our kids. We need to sit down and rethink what the family is and talk to our kids. We have gotten so away from that, that we don't spend a lot of time as a family any longer. And sometimes there are things that we need to do that's very difficult for us as mothers and fathers. But with the days and the times and the ages that we're living in now, it's time for us to really check out what our kids are really, really doing. How many of us have really sat down with our kids to find out if they have an illegal gun in their possession? How many of us can do that? How many of us can go and check that with our kids? There are a lot of young individuals out there who have guns, and we don't know where they're getting them, but we as parents, we can only control what's inside of our household. You had mentioned something, Shantae. You talked about how people talk about how Black, we always talk about Black Lives Matters and we trying to do this, and we're, it's so much gun violence in the Black community. Well, rightly so, because when you have a child that grows up in chaos, all they know is chaos, then they're going to live their lives as an adult in chaos. And it's a cycle. You've got all these young people who have seen their parents get killed, their cousins get killed, and who knows whatever else. And we expect them just to turn around and be upstanding citizens the next day. It's not going to happen until we realize that mental health is just as important as physical health, that needs to be checked. When I go to the doctor and he takes my temperature and takes my blood pressure, he needs to do some kind of check on my mind and where I'm coming from today. Because everybody is experiencing some level of trauma. And I don't even have to mention any of the names or the things that's going on in this world. You know, we are in havoc all over the world. And the fact that Louisville is under siege with gun violence among ourselves, there are things that we can do, like I said, within our families. Sit down and talk to our own families. Find out what's out there available. There are people, and I don't know all of them by name, but there are people out there who are growing gardens to help individuals who aren't used to eating fresh vegetables in the West End and making those vegetables available to you. Then we've got our Black brothers who just started their new distillery down in the West End. And I mean, that brings hope and brings more money into the area. But I mean, we can talk about the things that are going on all through the city all day long. But honestly, Shantae, it starts at home. It starts at home. And the other thing is we got a lot of babies raising babies. We got a lot of, and they don't know the values and the traditions of the family. So we have to raise those individuals like it's a village. We've got to help take care of them. And the way that we do it is build up our city, help our city. We've got to get involved. And although some of the things that we do, like, you know, I feel like this is so small. I feel like I need to be out in the streets and doing something else. But, you know, if everybody could just do their part, and take care of maybe the next door neighbor on both sides. We could cover it all if we just took care of the next door neighbors on both sides. That's just 2 households. But it could be so many different things. I was having a meeting with a friend about a week ago, and she's trying to write a grant to get buses, school buses, to have them around the city of Louisville for babies, for kids, where they can just get on the bus and work on the computers and sit and talk about their grief, their loss, just somewhere where they can just kind of let it all hang out. And then you have that young lady that's in the West End, and she's a young girl. Her father got killed with gun violence. She's a teenager, like 15, 16 years old. She has the cafe where she has the kids coming to the cafe and they sit down and they talk about their parents being killed with gun violence. There's lots of things going on. We just have to find a vehicle to tie it all together, like a resource, a big resource book or something, and let all of our beautiful Black families in the city of Louisville know where it is. And heck, go down there and pick them up and take them to where they need to go to get them there if they don't have transportation. But, you know, those times and those things are coming. It's going to happen. You know, if you love the city like we love the city, you want to see it better and you want to see your people thrive. You know, we've been through enough just as a Black people. And we need to come up out of this and shine and show our gifts and our hearts again. I'd really like to see that.
Yes. And you talked a little bit about the prison system as well. And so you gave us a lot of really interesting statistics. And I think one also that stands out to me is that 45% of the people in the criminal justice system have diagnosed mental health disorders. And so that's not even accounting for those who haven't yet dealt with that. How, as a community, can we address mental health, maybe professionally or through other type of healers, that there's access, that there's no stigma to receiving that treatment? Because for so long, Black people, we see mental health treatment maybe as a white thing, or untrusting of the system. And we have reasons to be untrusting of the system. How do we break out of that to be able to deal with healing our communities?
Well, you know, they always said in policy class, the media has an agenda. They've always got an agenda, and they want to take you, They can take you to different places. And what I've noticed, and I'm sure you all have too, is the abundance in mental health commercials that are coming out. They've got those commercials where you've got this one guy, he's laying on the bench and he's trying to lift up these weights and he can't do it. Another guy gets off his machine and goes over and he says, let me help you, man. Let me help you. He says, no, man, I can't do it. He says, you don't know how my family is. You don't know. They'll talk about me. They'll talk about me. You know, so they have those little type of commercials and it's little bites of ways to let people know it's okay. It's all right to be able to sit down and talk to somebody. I look at it like I'm paying somebody money to tell my secrets to. But, you know, it gives you an opportunity to clear your mind and to really share some thoughts and find some things out that's inside of you that you didn't know. And it helps you, you know, process some things. So I think anybody, you know, can have that opportunity with the different accesses that we have to medical assistance. Anybody should be able to access mental health therapy. And by all means, do not feel as though it's something that you don't want anybody to know that you're going to. You'd be surprised how many people are have therapy. In fact, they trying to make it like a little cool thing. Like, yeah, man, I was with my therapist the other day. But I mean, having a therapist on the side, that's not bad. That's something that we need with the things that we are going through. And I would suggest and advise all of our families in Louisville to get a family therapist. I would.
And speaking of Black men, because, you know, some of the statistics you gave too were very particular to Black men. How do we move Black men into that space? Are you aware of any resources here in the city of Louisville or surrounding areas that may speak specifically to men's mental health issues, or even any resource groups to discuss community violence?
Yes, there are fatherhood initiatives that they have out there, and they have, unfortunately, they started a long time ago, and I want to say like 2008, and it took them all the way to now to get those type programs going. But you talk about the prison system, you talk about the mental health piece, and you talk about Black men, right? Let me say this, because this is on my mind, and I hope this answers part of your question. How can we rehabilitate? How can we help those men that's in there with those mental health issues? Some of the sad things that I've seen is that, you know, you think we are the richest country out there. Now, I know I quoted to you a stat that in Japan, they only had 1 homicide death in 2021. Do you realize that in all the rich countries throughout the world, the United States has more deaths by the month of February than any of them do by the end of the year? So in answer to your question is, you know, what about the men? What are the different types of things that we can do for men? One of the things that I noticed when we traveled to Belize, I've taken several mission trips, and we would always go to the prison systems to see how they, you know, operated, compare them to the United States. And we went to the men's section. And one of the things that we noticed that was so incredible was that, you know how we talk about, okay, we're going to prison and we're going to be rehabilitated. But in the United States, you don't get rehabilitated in the prison system. You just sit in there and you just rot. In Belize, you are rehabilitated. They take them in and they have different sections that they go to. They can either go to the shipyard. This is all in the prison. You can go to the section in the shipyard and you can help steel, building the ships. Or you can build the little houses, the little bitty houses that they build. And when a prisoner gets out of jail, he can buy that house. His family can buy the house for him for $18,000. They have their own water system, irrigation system, where they teach them how to manufacture that. They also have woodwork and carpentry where they build those things. Their prison is set up where men, children, and female, all in the same prison, but separated, they rehabilitate themselves, something that the United States does not do. And I wish that if we did that in the United States with that mental health piece to it, we would be able to help our citizens, our Black citizens, a lot. But what happened, Shantae, is years ago, back when 7 counties had been 7 counties the first time, they got rid of all of our mental health agencies back like in 2002, something like that. They got rid of all of them, like we didn't need them. And then all of a sudden, all these mental health issues popped up. and they didn't know what to do with them. So what did they do? They locked them up. And that's why they're in prison right now. So now, without them saying we made a mistake, they came back, and now you have 7 counties and all them all back again. You know, it's not at the level that it was. You don't have a lot, but I mean, that's what happened. We had the services. We're trying to get more. I can remember going to town hall meetings, fighting in Henry County why you can't take this 7 counties office away. But they did. The politicians just took them all away. It's, you know, it's ridiculous. So here we are trying to grapple and build them back up again. You know, we're always one step behind. But that's where we are with the mental health system. And
it sounds like that, you know, that is why the healing team, part of the reason why Black Lives Matters thinks that is so important for us to even move along community advocacy about mental health, creating spaces where we have practitioners and clinicians who are Black, who are treating various genders, non-binary folks.
And there are many of them out there, and some of them are pro bono. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And so hopefully Black Lives Matter Louisville is doing their part to help to try to prepare some of these people and make the environment for receiving mental health services more comfortable, less stigma, and more widely available. And so we appreciate folks like you coming on to talk to us about what that looks like, because I think that sometimes people are of the misperception that people in mental health or fields like social work have perfect lives, haven't experienced some of the same things that people in the community go through. I think that we've been blessed with a gift at times to be able to learn how to process some of those same things, but it doesn't impact us any less. I think just as you said, it inspires us to continue doing the work and to bring as many people in as possible to make our communities better for the children that are coming up after us and inspire other people. Really, Dr. Sartin, you know, I met you this year and I've been really impressed. And I said, you know, before we went on, that I appreciate you as a seasoned elder who can pass along that wisdom to those of us that are coming behind you about how we can handle certain things, because there's really almost nothing new under the sun. So it's important for us to have these conversations at varying age groups, levels, genders, cultures,
all of us
borrow from each other and to share how we made it over. Isn't that the old spiritual? I can't think of the name of the song now. I'm bad about that. So my church going folks are going to get How I Made It Over. It doesn't come to me now, but I think that that's how we grow. We build and we pour into each other about what our experiences have been. Just like I think we had one of the comments on tonight that your story was very inspiring to someone else who lost a family member 15 years ago. So we can always be learning and growing throughout that grief process. So we really appreciate you coming out and speaking to us and sharing that story, because I appreciate that it's so fresh. And you and your husband there, which our viewers can't see, I'm calling him out a little bit. He's there supportive, right there with you.
Here he comes.
Oh, here he comes. Okay, good. He's going to join us a little bit, y'all.
This is it. There he is.
Hi, everyone.
All right. There, see, she's got her support there. And that's important too. You know, your support may not always be on camera or right there, you know, beside you all the time. They may not be that person.
That's right.
Everybody doesn't have the same strengths, same qualities, same attributes. There are things that we need to get from different people. So I appreciate the both of you here today. You know, we really invited the both of you to come on. And like Dr. Sartin, we're talking about, it takes different elements for us to process through our and different people at different times and different systems and changes and things like that to really appreciate. So thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
for coming on.
Thanks so much.
And I know we're just wrapping up. We have a few more minutes, so I do want to end and give you the floor with any closing remarks that you would like to make. But Black Lives Matters Louisville really appreciates your input. And we appreciate you spending time with us tonight. We hope that folks, if they weren't able to watch the live while we were on, that they will check it out on our Facebook page. And if there's any follow-up questions, we'll be sure to pass those along to Dr. Sartin again. So any future social workers out there, Dr. Sartin again is on faculty at Campbellsville University. And it kind of hurts my heart. I'm going to get Dr. Sartin every time I say that. You know, I'm a Cardinal through and through. Go Cardinals.
Hey, I'm a U of L alumni too, girl. Don't go.
Okay. You know,
we good. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So, but wherever, you know, you all can get good education and good information, please reach out to Dr. Sartin. You see, we are scrolling her website there. If you need to reach out to Dr. Sartin, she would be available through those avenues. So, Dr. Sartin, with that said, I will give you the floor to close us out tonight.
I think you said something to close out with. I think that I would say is just to remind all of us that we are a strong people. We are a strong Black people. And don't give up on ourselves. Don't give up on our babies. Don't give up on our families. We just need to reach out just a little bit more and help one another a little bit more. I realize we all don't know what that looks like, but we as a people, we need to help one another and teach one another what that looks like. And I appreciate you all letting me come on today to tell my story. I hope that it helped some of you to, you know, put into place what you went through, or to help you to understand that it does feel the same, or it feels like that for everybody. I hope that gave you some sense of closure as well. So with that, I'm going to say farewell. And I thank all of you for being here and listening to my story, because it does mean a lot to me and my husband and my family that people are listening and that people are sharing what we're going through as well. So together as a people, as a Black people, we're going to be strong, and we're going to find some kind of way to tie this gun violence down and decrease it in our city and save our babies. So we'll all come together with Black Lives Matters in Louisville Healing Hour. Once again, thank you so much, and have a blessed evening.